Well, it is Wednesday morning, our weekly check-in time. We call it Coffee with PC. That's because I always bring, well, not always, I have forgotten it recently, my cup of coffee, just a little K-cup in here, Keurig cup from the office here today to keep me going on this Wednesday. I don't know what you're sipping on this morning or what keeps you going this middle of the week, but I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me, and hopefully this will be a little midweek pick-me-up, especially as it involves who Jesus is and the things that he said. We're fortunate that we have in the Bible, particularly the New Testament, 4 different accounts of the life, the teachings, the ministry of Jesus. And we're looking at the first of those 4. We've been wandering through it for a long time. The gospel according to Matthew. Matthew, one of his followers that was a tax collector that gave it all up to follow Jesus, writes an account of who Jesus was, what he said, what he did, so that we could have it. And we've been looking at some of that, and we're way toward the end of it. We're in one of these extended sections of Jesus's teaching. Sometimes this section's called the Olivet Discourse. And what we've noted the last few weeks is it is full of all sorts of fantastical images, pictures, and kind of cataclysmic, apocalyptic, sometimes we call it, these events, the end of the world stuff. And we're coming to the end of that. We haven't really gotten into the nitty-gritty of those things as we've gone, just mentioned them. But at the end of that section where he uses all this imagery, Jesus tells a series of stories, and he makes the point over and over again, a similar point in different ways of telling these stories, to how do we respond to kind of all of this apocalyptic, fantastical, end of time imagery. What is the right thing to do? And to summarize it in the verses we are today, verses 42 and 43 and 44, Jesus basically says, be ready. Now in the Keys, we know something about being ready. We are in, I hate to bring it up, but we have to. I guess it's a reality of life, that June to November, wonderful season of the year, hurricane season. And if you've been in the Keys or really anywhere in Florida, the Southeast, we watch these things, these disturbances that are out there, whether it's coming off the coast of Africa, whether it's coming up out of the Caribbean, wherever it starts. We begin to watch them and they can develop, and they talk about all the currents that might make them stronger, weaker, turn them left or right. And then we get to the point where it goes from a disturbance to a named storm, and now we've got that name. And then we get the wonderful, what is often dubbed the cone of uncertainty, that forecast cone that they come out with from the National Weather Service that we watch. Are we in the cone? Are we out of the cone? The cone bounces around, typically depending on different steering currents for the storm. And then at some point we realize as we're getting our information, as we're watching these developments, okay, we're going to be affected by this storm. And what do? We get ready. We know if you're in the Keys, there's some things we have to do. You have probably storm shutters of some kind, storm windows maybe, but also storm shutters. So you get out the panels and put them up, or pull down those, or however it is that you have to protect your house. We know that the outside, the yard area around the house, we need to kind of clean that up. We don't want things that can blow around in the wind. Maybe we need to think about, okay, depending on where it is and where we live and flooding and that sort of thing, maybe we need to evacuate. So we start making all these plans. We start getting ready for this thing that's coming. So we're very familiar with that. And I was thinking, as I was putting this together, what would it be like if we lived in an era where we didn't have the warnings that we have today? Already, a disturbance that comes off Africa that could be a week or two going across the Atlantic. We could follow it the whole way and talk all about the possibilities and all of that sort of thing. But there was a time when those technologies weren't there, that you just woke up in the morning and the wind started blowing and you had no idea how big or how bad it was going to get. I mean, what a different way that would be to live. We take so much for granted. Jesus kind of uses this analogy, a different one for getting ready, and he uses one that most people aren't ready for. He uses the idea of someone breaking in as a thief into your house, and he says, if you're the owner of the house, if you had known what time of the night the thief was coming, you would have kept watch and would not let your house be broken into, right? You would have been ready for it. If you got a text message, an email, I don't know if thieves really work this way, some sort of indication from the thief, hey, I'm going to break into your house at this time, you would be prepared. You would be ready. You would do everything you could to prevent that to happen. But the thing with this kind of scenarios, we just like hurricane, however many years ago that didn't have warning, typically it's not something that we're warned by. We just have to be ready. And Jesus uses that analogy, and he says, not so much that I tell you when he comes, he says, so you also must be ready, even though you don't know when the Son of Man will come. The Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. That's tough. It's in hurricane season and hurricane situations and hurricane areas, you watch and you're ready because you see it coming. But for Jesus, he says his coming, the Son of Man's coming, won't be like that. It won't be something you can pinpoint. Okay, we know this day, the wind, today we get all the graphics. The winds are going to be at this strength at this hour, and the eye is going to hit, all of that stuff. We don't have that with the coming of the Son of Man. And yet Jesus still says we can be ready. So what does it mean? That's really the question. We know what it means to be ready for a hurricane. What does it mean to be ready, as Jesus says, to keep watch, to be ready for when the Son of Man comes? Well, I think a couple of words might be helpful for us. And they're in the very next verse and kind of in the very next story Jesus tells. He says in verse 45, he talks about the faithful and wise servant. I think those are two great words that help us maybe get a little bit of a handle, not certainly an exhaustive handle, but a little bit of a handle on what it means to be ready for the Son of Man will come at an hour you do not know. It means to be those two things, faithful and wise. And maybe we should add a third word, a servant. That's a picture that Jesus uses in the next parable, the next little story, to help us understand that. What does it mean to be faithful? Well, if I could summarize it, I might talk about being faithful to the things that God has called us to do and to be developing in ourselves that character of Christ that he's exemplified by his life and ministry. One of the benefits of what's here, and it's doing it continually, not getting discouraged, not thinking, oh, he hasn't come back. We're in the year 2025 and Jesus ascended 2,000 almost years ago, so why are we it's easy to kind of let down your guard. In fact, that next parable is sort of about that he hasn't come back, so maybe he'll never come back. But being faithful is not letting those things discourage you, to continue in faithfulness. And then to be wise. What does that mean? Well, there's a lot of things we can mean. Again, I'm not trying to give an exhaustive biblical definition of what faithfulness means and what wisdom means, but just kind of in this kind of free-flowing way that Jesus talks about the faithful and wise servant. I think wise is someone that, like we're trying to do, understands the word of God, the Bible, and tries to put it into practice and tries to allow the Holy Spirit to help them discern how to do that. In fact, our Sunday morning series in the Sermon on the Mount has a lot of practicality to it, where Jesus talks about how we can live out his kingdom values, how we can be faithful to his kingdom, how we can be wise in the things we encounter. And so the faithful and wise servant, Jesus kind of gives us this picture of someone who will be ready. Again, we don't know when. Jesus says, as we said a few weeks ago, he doesn't even know when, but we have the certainty that one day the Son of Man will come, and in that coming, he will set right every wrong. And that's something that is the hope of Christians all over the world, especially in a world full of evil and injustice and unrighteousness. We look forward to the day when God will set that right. But we want to be ready. We want to be faithful and wise in how we live our lives in the midst of a world that often doesn't show faithfulness and wisdom in God. So there's the kind of way Jesus wraps up this section of the sermon, and he introduces several parables. We might talk about them over the next few weeks, ways that he illustrates this very topic, that we should be faithful and wise servants, always prepared, always ready, because we don't know when Jesus would come. By the way, that's what we do in our church here. That's why we need each other as fellow Christians, is to be encouraged, because life can be difficult. And we are not perfect. We're not always faithful, and we're not always wise. I'm not always faithful. I haven't always been wise. But I'm so grateful to God that we have Jesus, both as our example and as our Savior, the one who provides forgiveness and hope for us when we do blow it, when we are unfaithful and unwise, that we can turn and confess and learn from those and be restored and forgiven to right relationship with God. Whether it's the Sermon on the Mount, whether it's this section of the teaching of Jesus, we spend our whole lives and we'll spend our whole eternity trying to get a hold of what it means to be faithful to him. And so if you're looking for a church home, you're looking for a place to worship with others and to learn about the way of Jesus and to follow him with people that are trying their best to be faithful and wise, we sure love to have you join us. Sundays, 9 a.m. We'll be right here. We're in the Sermon on the Mount. I think we're going to finish up the entire series of the Sermon on the Mount this Sunday. And I'm toying with, no promises, I might go to the Matthew 23, 24, 25 red letter sermon type section of Jesus's discourse in Matthew as our next step. Not sure, just a thought, but could be, because I've enjoyed reading through this as we've prepared together. Well, hey, I've taken up enough of your time this morning. Just want to spend a few minutes, and I'm anxious to get back and finish this coffee. And so I will let you get back to your day as I get back to mine. Thanks again for spending a few minutes with me. Hope you have a great Wednesday.